Hey people, welcome to the Run Testers. In this video we're getting into the nitty and the gritty on the new Brooks Hyperion. This is a lightweight non-plated training shoe that's built for speedy sessions. It's an interesting shoe that drops in cheaper than the Hyperion Max and asks the question of its price to your sibling, do we really need plates to train fast? So is it any good? Well, watch our Hyperion review to find out. First up, some quick details then. Well, the new Brooks Hyperion has an 8mm drop with a low stack of 22mm in the heel and 14mm in the forefoot. It's the lightest training shoe in Brooks's lineup and it comes in at 8.1 ounces or 230 grams in our UK men's size 9 test shoe. That's 10 grams heavier than the Max, but a shade lighter than something like the Saucony Endorphin Speed 3. Price-wise, it's £140 or $140 in the US. Let's have a quick whip round of the shoe then. Well, let's start with the midsole first. You've got a nitrogen-infused DNA flash midsole. That's the same midsole foam you find in the Hyperion Max. It also has the same drop as the Hyperion Max, but an 8mm lower stack overall, both in the heel and in the forefoot. Up top, you've got a warp knit mesh upper. It's fairly thick, fairly foot wrapping. There's more to it than you get on the thinner and baggier Hyperion Max as well. You've got medium padded heel collars with a structured heel counter for good hold and support. You've also got a slightly flared heel here away from the Achilles. There's a thin and racy tongue, that textured lacing for secure lace up, and a partially gusseted tongue. Flip them over and there's a good covering of outsoled rubber for grip and durability.
So I've had the Hyperion in a UK size 8 and I would definitely say it fits a little on the snug side, and that's coming from someone who's got pretty kind of skinny narrow feet and generally gets on with narrow fitting shoes in general. It's mainly does the fact you get quite a narrow fit at the midfoot of this shoe. It does open up a little bit more and you do get a good amount of space up front of the toe, so there's no problems there, but it definitely is narrow at the middle and a little bit further back in this shoe. Going half size up I think is going to make it too long, so that's not really an issue here, but that is something to be mindful of in terms of what you're getting here on the shoe. Elsewhere I was pretty happy in terms of the lockdown. You get these laces and this kind of V-shaped tongue. It's quite skinny as well, that tongue, and there's not generous amounts of padding here around the heel collar, but just enough to kind of offer a little bit more comfort here. But ultimately it's about keeping this upper kind of nice and lightweight for the types of runs it's designed for. So yeah, I would say snug fitting for my UK size 8, something to be kind of mindful of, and definitely is a little bit on the narrow side, particularly in the midfoot of this shoe.
Fit then, I ran in a UK size 9. I'm somewhere between a size 8.5 and 9, but I tend to go at 8.5 in most shoes. And actually this 9 was a little bit too long for me in this shoe. So having tested half a size up, I'd actually recommend going true to size in these shoes. Though as Mike says, they are a little bit narrow across the midfoot, and that is something you might want to pay attention to. So onto the run test, and I have to confess I did about 18 miles in these shoes over 2 runs before I even looked at the tech sheet to find out what they were for. And on those runs, I mostly moved at easier paces. And then I checked out Brooks's info on the shoe and realised that they're targeted at faster training efforts. So I took them out for a few speedier sessions to see how they got on there as well. Now, overall, I've logged 35 miles in the Hyperion, and as usual, I mix my miles between the roads of West London's and the light off-road river paths alongside the Thames and some park paths as well. Now, step-in comfort for me was good from the get-go. The upper's wrapped and held without restricting. There's good lockdown. There's no slipping in the heel for me. It holds really nicely. And once you get moving, the first thing that you notice is that in a world of big bouncy midsoles and springy plate combos, the Hyperion run a little more traditional. It's all just a little bit more old school underfoot than some of the sort of super trainers that we've seen. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing. I think they're responsive but not springy, and they're definitely on the firmer side when it comes to this type of shoes now, but without being foot punishingly direct. I think this is definitely a shoe that demands a faster turnover, but it's not without protection too, which is why I managed an easy 90-minute 10-miler without too much bother actually. But then I like firmer shoes. If you prefer things a little bit softer or more bouncy or highly cushioned, you'll probably find this a little bit too direct for that kind of running, but I kind of tend to cope in it. But when I upped my tempo for those intervals, I enjoyed them a lot here. These shoes really kind of came into their own. That's when the light and direct response sort of really started to kick in. I think it provides good energy without any sluggishness, but doing it in a more traditional way than the new bouncy kind of plated super trainers that you get. So if you like things a little bit more old school, I think these shoes might be for you. At a fast turnover, I think they definitely came alive. And I like the shoe isn't one of those shoes that tries to do all the work for you. You still are going to have a fast foot pickup, and you're still doing some of the work. I also don't think I really found myself wanting a plate in this shoe. I think they performed really well without them. There's good stability too. It coped on road and light trails equally well. And I have to say overall, I'm impressed. Would I buy it over the likes of the Speed 3 or the Mac X? I'll let you know in the verdict.
So into that run test now, I haven't run it in the Hyperion Tempo, and when the Hyperion Max arrived with me, I was very much injured. I was doing no running, so I didn't really have any running in that shoe either. So I was definitely intrigued to spend some time with one of those kind of more up-tempo Hyperion shoes. Now, the first thing I say I do like about this shoe is that it is nice and light. It's maybe not as light as something like the Asics Magic Speed 3, which I've spent a lot of time in recently, but it's definitely on the right side in terms of weight, in terms of being something that's suitable for kind of those more up-tempo runs. Don't absolutely leave this colourway. Obviously, colourway is not everything, but I do think you can make a good green, attractive green shoe. Saucony Endorphin Elite being a good example of that. Don't think it quite works on the Hyperion. Colourway aside, obviously in terms of what you're getting in the midsole, you are getting kind of DNA Flash, which is that kind of nitrogen based midsole that Brooks has been using. It's obviously similar to what we've got in the Hyperion Tempo as well too. Now in terms of what that offers, and in terms of feeling, you're not getting a massively stacked shoe here. It's pretty low to the ground feeling in terms of what you're getting here. It's pretty responsive. Is it as snappy and explosive as some other kind of shoes that are pretty low to the ground? Obviously, the natural one for me would be the Asics Magic Speed 3. Now, my first session, this was a track session, and it felt pretty good in general, but I think it lacked the pop that you get in something like the Magic Speed 3 in comparison to that shoe. Maybe feels a little bit more geared to racing, whereas I think this is a bit more in terms of, this is something you're using for your training overall. But I do think maybe when you're running a bit harder in it, a bit shorter with that kind of faster stuff, then you need to work a little bit harder to get the most out of the shoe. But it is responsive, it is snappy, maybe just doesn't explode at those quicker paces. Where I actually found it was a little bit nicer was the kind of more up-tempo, kind of tempo style runs that I did in this shoe. I definitely felt when you settle in, you've got a kind of smooth, I would say pretty stable ride in general. It's pretty consistent in terms of what you're getting here in the shoe. There's a gentle kind of rocker feeling to give you that kind of nice little push when you are running a little bit more quick in this shoe. And it felt pretty good overall. I didn't feel the overall stiffness in it. I think, you probably wouldn't want to go further than kind of, 10 miles, half, up to kind of half marathon distance in it. It definitely feels like a shoe for kind of shorter, sharper distances for me. But for me, it just lacks that extra pop you get in some other speedy daily trainers, which I'll get into in the verdict. Anyway, I think I do really like about the shoe is the outsole. There's a lot of rubber here, particularly up front here of the shoe. So gripping wise, it was absolutely fine. I didn't have to run in any kind of wet conditions. The kind of rain hasn't been as frequent here, or at the time I've gone out to run the shoe, haven't had to run in any rain yet, but I do think there's enough rubber here in the outsole to handle some lighter trail stuff as well. And I do think it's going to offer a good level of durability. So if you are using it on a regular basis, then I do feel like it's a shoe that's going to handle plenty of running as well too. But yeah, as I said, it's a very good solid shoe. I did find that it felt nicer at my kind of tempo pace, kind of 10k pace, whereas I think the shorter, sharper stuff, I was almost feeling like I wanted a little bit more from it. I had to work a little bit harder for it to feel a little bit nicer on those faster kind of sessions, where I think it just lacked a little bit of that pop that I do find on some other kind of speedy daily trainers. But solid overall. Yeah, no bad runs in it. Overall, a very good run, solid shoe. Is it the shoe that's going to blow everyone away and everyone should buy? I'll get into that in the verdict. So my verdict on the Brooks Hyperion, I feel like I do like about some of the other shoes in Brooks's range. I think of things like what Brooks has done with the Ghost, where it hasn't tried to change too much. And I think ultimately it feels like this is what they've done with the Hyperion. I think if you like the Hyperion Tempo and what that offered in terms of the types of runs that it's designed for, it's something you want that feels familiar and it's going to give you that kind of low to ground feel, that responsive ride, and a good kind of durable outsole as well, and a light upper as well, then that's kind of what you're getting. It's more of the same here, I would say, ultimately. If you look at it in terms of other speedy daily trainers, and does it give you that kind of amazing kind of pop and excitement when you're running quicker in it? I don't think it absolutely matches up with some other shoes. I think of things like the obviously the Asics Magic Speed 3, the Saucony Endorphin Speed 3 as well. I would probably throw the Hoka Mac 5 in there as well, which is another obviously non-plated shoe as well. And I feel like these just feel a little bit more lively at that kind of quicker paces that I've done in those shoes ultimately. I do think, you know, that's not a knock against the Hyperion. I do think there's a lot to like about it. It does feel very solid. It's cheaper than those shoes in general as well. So if you were looking for something that, as I said, very similar to the Hyperion Tempo, offers you something that can handle, I think, a lot of time on your feet, offers that kind of, you know, as I said, connected, low to the ground feel and that responsive midsole, then that's what you're going to get in this shoe. I just think that if you are looking for something a bit more exciting, there are better shoes out there. But that's, you know, as I said, I've had very good runs in the Hyperion. I just think, for me personally, is it going to slot into my rotation over other shoes? I would probably grab it, no issue, and it would be absolutely fine. But I do think there's other shoes that can do a lot of what this shoe already does, and maybe excels at mostly. So yeah, that's my take on the Hyperion. Pretty solid. You know, as I said, for someone that's not running the Hyperion Tempo and the Hyperion Max, pretty solid experience overall. I just think there are other shoes, for me personally, in that kind of speedy daily trainer profile that just feel a little bit more exciting overall.
So my verdict then, I think if you like the Hyperion Max, you'll probably like these as well, because there's not a huge amount to choose between those two shoes from Brooks, even though one's plated, one's not. Now this is a good fast effort shoe. It's the kind of shoe I think that's made for intervals. I think you'll need to like your shoes a little bit more traditional, a little bit more firm to enjoy it, particularly when you compare to some of the super trains we're starting to see. But if you do like that, I think you'll like these. They tick a lot of the right boxes. They're light, they're snappy. I think they encourage a faster turnover. They work best when you're moving with fast feet at higher paces relative to your own pace. But they can soak up the slower stuff as well. Those recovery segments when you're moving, they're kind of okay too. There's protection there. Now I really like these for kind of 1 hour sort of mile interval sessions where I was doing kind of 1 mile slow, 1 mile fast. That's when they really work for me best. Like the Hyperion Max, these weren't a wow shoe for me though. I like them, and I think you're getting a pretty good versatile shoe for £140. But looking at how they compare to other popular daily trainers, I think they don't top things like the Saucony Endorphin Speed, for which I think does the top speed and the slower stuff better, has more versatility overall. I also think that they're more comfortable though than the Mac X. They're lighter and livelier than the Mac 5. And I think I'd probably buy them over the Hyperion Max as well. So there you have it. That's been our review of the Brooks Hyperion. I hope you've found it useful. Hit like and subscribe if so. If you want to see what we made of the Brooks Hyperion Max, that video will be appearing on the channel just about now. Otherwise, thanks for watching, and we hope to see you again soon on the Run Testers. Happy running, people. Good luck with whatever it is that you're trying to achieve out there.